First, they blew off his door. Then specialist firearms officers piled into the suspect's home. The Met officers used dozens of stun grenades.
The UK is outpacing the rest of Europe in the number of deaths from nitazines. That's according to drug experts.
North London, dawn. Officers from the Metropolitan Police and the National Crime Agency moving simultaneously through addresses in Tottenham, Hackney and Wood Green. The streets a Met Chief Superintendent has personally described as home to the #1 threat to the UK and London in terms of firearms, heroin processing equipment, cash counting machines, dozens detained in coordinated strikes against a criminal network that has operated in plain sight in this corner of the capital for over 3 decades. £15 million in heroin pulled off the streets before it ever reached a user. This is not a new threat. This is one of the oldest, most entrenched and most violent organised crime networks in British history, finally being hit with the scale of operation its reputation has long demanded. Because what officers are dismantling in North London is not a loose collection of dealers. It is a structured criminal dynasty with roots stretching back to the 1980s. Blood feuds that have claimed lives across 3 continents, and a historical grip on the British heroin trade so total that one of its founding figures was once linked to 90% of the heroin consumed in the entire United Kingdom. Before we go through every layer of what this raid actually represents, the history, the rival gangs, the firearms threat assessment, and what is driving a surge in violence right now in 2026, let's be honest. North London's Turkish organised crime networks have operated under the radar of mainstream coverage for years, surfacing only when a shooting makes headlines and then disappearing again. That's why British Front Media exists. Subscribe now, because what follows is the complete picture. Reason number 1. Turkish organised crime groups have controlled the heroin trade into Britain for over 30 years, and police have called them the country's #1 firearms threat. This is not exaggeration. This is the assessment of the Metropolitan Police itself. Chief Superintendent Rick Seward told Metro directly, the Turkish gangs are the #1 threat to the UK and London in terms of firearms. Last year alone, authorities recovered 138 firearms and 2,500 rounds of ammunition from a single Turkish organised crime group. The 2 dominant groups, known as the Bombaçılar or Hackney Turks and the Tottenham Boys or Tottenham Turks, have established control over neighbourhoods in North and East London through violence, heroin smuggling and protection rackets, with strongholds in Tottenham, Wood Green and Dalston. In 2003, police discovered a literal torture chamber in the basement of a Turkish-owned property on Green Lanes, Tottenham. Local shopkeepers have told reporters they fear retaliation simply for speaking to police. In this community, talking to the police is a danger to us and our families. We are living in fear, one Green Lanes trader said. Reason number 2. The man once linked to 90% of all UK heroin was a Tottenham crime boss, and his organisation's legacy networks remain active today. Abdullah Baybashin, who arrived in London in 1997 after being left wheelchair-bound by rival gunmen in Turkey, established the Bombaçılar gang from his family home in Edgware, running protection rackets against shopkeepers before receiving a 23-year sentence in 2006 for conspiracy to supply heroin and blackmail. Media reports at the time said the gang he led was responsible for the entry of 90% of the heroin consumed in the United Kingdom. He was later acquitted on retrial, returned to Turkey, was convicted again over a Bolivian cocaine shipment, and was eventually released in 2017. The Baybashin family is described by criminologists as the founding dynasty of Turkish organised crime in Europe, and the legacy networks remain influential through connections across London, Amsterdam and Antwerp. This is not a network that emerged overnight. It is generational. 30 years of infrastructure, relationships and routes connecting British streets to heroin production zones thousands of miles away. Reason number 3. A child was shot in the head in a North London restaurant, and it was a direct consequence of escalating Turkish gang warfare over the heroin trade. This is the human cost that gets buried beneath the statistics. On 24th May 2024, a clash between rival Turkish gangs erupted on Hackney's Kingsland High Street. 3 men were shot and injured. A 9-year-old girl having dinner with her family at the Evan restaurant was struck by a bullet that became permanently lodged in her brain. Her parents told British media they do not know whether she will fully recover. At the Old Bailey, Javon Riley, a 33-year-old from Tottenham linked to the Tottenham Turks, was convicted of attempted murder for helping orchestrate the shooting. He did not pull the trigger. He helped the gunman escape and disposed of the weapon. The feud that led to that bullet entering a 9-year-old's skull began with a brawl at a North London snooker hall in 2009. 15 years of accumulated violence finally spilling into a family restaurant on a normal evening. Reason number 4. The collapse of Afghan opium production has triggered a deadly turf war between rival Turkish factions, and the body count is rising across Europe. This is the development that has transformed a long-running criminal rivalry into an active shooting war. When the Taliban banned opium cultivation in Afghanistan in 2022, the heroin supply that Turkish gangs had long dominated collapsed. Scarcity drove prices up, and rival factions began fighting over a shrinking, more lucrative supply. Senior Tottenham Turks leader Izzet Eren was shot dead in a Moldovan cafe, a professional hit in an otherwise quiet country. A former lawyer has since been ruled extraditable to Moldova to face trial for plotting his murder. A criminology expert at George Mason University, Mahmut Cengiz, told investigators, recently, conflicts have arisen between these groups due to the Tottenham Turks' increasing involvement in heroin trafficking. This rivalry has led to both groups targeting each other in violent clashes. He predicted the violence would escalate further, citing the group's operational capacity, dominance in crime sectors, and extensive global networks. Cengiz also confirmed the gangs are diversifying, moving from heroin into cocaine trafficking, facilitated by collaborations between Turkish criminal groups in Europe and within Turkey itself. Reason number 5. NCA raids on Turkish-linked barbershops across multiple British cities uncovered money laundering operations far beyond London. This is not contained to the capital. Recent National Crime Agency raids on barbershops in Birmingham, Luton, Bradford, and Manchester uncovered money laundering operations linked to Turkish networks. The same pattern documented in London, cash-intensive businesses serving as a front for organised crime profits, has been replicated nationwide. A community source with direct knowledge of the network's history described how thoroughly Turkish organised crime embedded itself into legitimate London commerce. Within 10 years, they'd bought up half of Peckham, Croydon, the East End, the source told investigators. Cash businesses became both the backbone of legitimate Turkish immigrant life and convenient cover for trafficking, due to Turkey's geographic proximity to heroin and cannabis production routes. Social clubs and cafes that look entirely ordinary from the street became, in the source's words, discreet hubs where traffickers, dealers and enforcers mingled out of public view. Reason number 6. Britain remains Europe's largest heroin market, worth at least £4 billion a year, and Turkish networks remain central to keeping that supply flowing. This is the financial scale behind the raid. The UK heroin market is estimated to be worth at least £4 billion per year and is the largest heroin market in Europe. A significant amount of the heroin smuggled in large containerised shipments to EU ports, notably Rotterdam, is intended specifically for the UK market. The NCA's own 2025 strategic assessment confirms that despite supply disruption from the Taliban's opium ban, heroin remains widely available in the UK, though wholesale prices have increased. The market has not collapsed. It has tightened and grown more dangerous, with the NCA noting the heroin market is increasingly cut with synthetic opioids, making it far more lethal than the heroin of a decade ago. The human cost of this market is severe. The NCA confirms drug-related deaths in the UK increased by 15% in 2023, with heroin associated with the largest number of deaths of any drug category, and the total annual cost of drug use and drug-related deaths to UK society now exceeding £20 billion. Behind every kilo of heroin seized in this raid sits a chain of human harm, addiction, violence, exploitation, and death that stretches from Tottenham's back streets to opium fields thousands of miles away. So here is where Britain stands in June 2026. Dozens detained, £15 million in heroin seized. A criminal dynasty rooted in North London for over 30 years, once linked to 9/10 of the entire UK heroin supply, now locked in an escalating lethal turf war driven by global supply shocks. A 9-year-old girl shot in the head at dinner because of a feud that started in a snooker hall 15 years earlier. 138 firearms and 2,500 rounds of ammunition seized from one group in a single year. A Metropolitan Police Chief Superintendent describing this network on the record as Britain's #1 firearms threat. This raid is not the end of that story. The Met and the NCA have struck a real blow. £15 million in heroin off the streets is £15 million that will never fund another shooting, another shipment, another funeral. But the networks behind it have survived prison sentences, extraditions, assassinations, and 3 decades of law enforcement pressure. The question Britain has to answer is whether this raid is the beginning of dismantling that 30-year infrastructure, or another disruption the network will simply absorb and rebuild around, the way it always has. Subscribe to British Front Media.